Okay, hello everyone. This is Sheila with the Grateful Goddess, and I'm super excited to bring you Kate Towell, who is an Ayurvedic wellness and holistic health counselor. So, welcome, Kate.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Wonderful, thank you. So, if you could just start, for those who are unfamiliar with Ayurveda, if you could just give us some brief description of what that's all about.
Sure. I guess the easiest synopsis of Ayurveda is that it's considered to be a sister science to yoga. Mm-hmm. That it came from the same text, the teachings, as yoga. And it's the oldest continuous tradition of medicine practice anywhere in the world. So they don't really know dates about when things began, but they say about 5,000 years ago. And it's Ayurveda is India's traditional medicine. Mm-hmm. But it still is practiced readily throughout India today in hospitals and teachings. And it is considered, as looking from it from the outside in, maybe like your grandmother's wisdom. Yes. But it's actually a deep science, right? There's a lot more to it. There's texts, ancient texts that describe surgeries. And but for the most part, it's just, you could say that it's India's tradition of holistic medicine.
Awesome. So is there a particular life situation that ended up drawing you to this practice?
Yes, there is. So
one you're willing to share?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can share it, actually. It's interesting because a lot of people come to yoga first, mm-hmm. and I'm also a yoga teacher, and then kind of find Ayurveda along the path of yoga. It gets talked about, and more Ayurveda is becoming mainstream. When I first really went to Ayurveda school 6 years ago, there wasn't talked about. You see it in magazines now. Dr. Oz talks about Ayurveda, so mm-hmm. it's becoming more of a household word, at least in certain circles.
Especially if you follow Deepak Chopra. Yeah,
Deepak Chopra, absolutely. One of the first optimal wellness book, all of those things. Yeah. So about, I guess, a little over 10 years ago, mm-hmm. I was practicing yoga, but at the time I didn't know that it wasn't the right yoga for me. I was doing a lot of things that were really intense. I was doing hot yoga on my lunch hour. I was training for triathlons. I was doing big races. My job was really active and stressful and physical and a lot of different things. And so I had a reaction in my body where my joints were inflamed, my skin was inflamed, and it all culminated in a rash around my eyes, this red, inflamed rash around my eyes that was pretty unsightly and that wouldn't go away. And so I went to a number of Western doctors and a lot of disconnected symptoms, or even at that time, they would just say, oh, it's an autoimmune, or take a steroid for the rest of your life or until it goes away. And I was deeply unsatisfied, or they just said it's stress, but no tools to do anything about it. Yeah. Like a topical steroid cream, those kinds of things, which I didn't want to put around my eye. That was the answer. Yeah. So, it was kind of, I think, even before Groupon, but somehow there was a discounted thing for an Ayurvedic practitioner to go in and get a consultation, which I had never even heard of the word. So in the kind of yoga that I was practicing, 10, 11, 12 years ago, it was more physical than how my yoga practice has evolved now to physical and more spiritual and more holistic. So anyway, so I go to see this man, and he does the pulse, the tongue. I answered a questionnaire like maybe many of you have who are familiar with Ayurveda, of all hundreds of questions about this and that and the other thing. A few days later, he sent me a binder with an explanation of everything. But basically, I have, I think about Ayurveda, I have a Pitta constitution, Pitta Vata, and my Pitta was really agitated. All of the heat, all of the hot things, and I was having a huge inflammation response. So he was like, stop doing that hot yoga at noon, the hottest part of the day, and, basically take the heat out and bring in some cooling practices. And, I just shifted out of maybe the 10 things he gave me. I shifted maybe 3 things. Wow. and saw like immediately changes, both in my physical, my physical, what was happening in my skin and those things. And I think I took one herb. But for me emotionally, at the same time I was frustrated, I was having really hot emotions, and that made, it did two things for me. It really made me dive into Ayurveda, just in my daily life. It wasn't about going to school for it at that point at all, and making Ayurveda part of my daily life. And it really shifted my yoga practice, and choosing different yoga practice that was just better for me personally. Right. And that really deepened my yoga practice. So it was really good, because then I had both of those things. Then I found a different studio, and I started taking these practices and doing these different things. So it was really beautiful, and it was really powerful for me on multiple levels.
Right. And it's so interesting, because I think it's so common for us to really push our bodies, because we think that is picture of health, like we're doing it for our health. And when you really look at it, each body is so individual. And so it wasn't that he wanted you to quit doing some of these health practices. It was like, make sure that the health practices were in the right ones for your body. Right.
I mean, I think that's a beautiful point, because it was things I was competitive, because I have Pitta nature, like all my life I had been doing these things, but so much of it at once. And I think that's so true. We adapt these practices. Oh, my friend's doing this thing, or, oh, they had great success with this. And that was the thing about, like, even for me, the triathlon, I was doing it with friends. I met a whole community of friends around it. And I didn't take the time to stop to say, how do I feel, riding a bike for 6 hours a day? Is that like the best practice for me?
Right. Because for some people, absolutely. But yeah. I'm Pitta also, Pitta Vata, so I get it.
Yeah.
What I really love and hope that you can give us some insights on is how the tongue can tell us so much about our bodies and our state of physical health. So can you share some about that?
Yeah, sure. So one thing that we did together when we met was tongue diagnosis. And it was interesting. I was talking to a client of mine earlier today, and we were both talking about how much we love the tongue.
Yeah.
And, she is so interesting, because she has like 8 kids, and so she looks at all their tongues and does the whole thing. So, I mean, both Ayurveda and Chinese medicine and a number of other traditions understand that our body is signaling us all the time. It's sending us messages. And we're less and less tuned into those messages, right? We just sort of say, oh, this is the way I am. This is how it is. Yes. And we sort of ignore the body's messages until, like in my case, you just can't ignore it anymore because it's on your face. And it says, like, you've got to stop and do something now. And if I knew about looking at my tongue, I'm sure I would have seen something on my tongue much sooner. And so what they found out in Ayurvedic medicine is that, yes, taking the pulse, looking at the body, but looking at the tongue was deeply reflected. And the tongue is a map of our inner ecosystem. And so when you look at the tongue, it can tell you things about all the organs, right? What's happening in the organs, but more so than on the physical level. I mean, you can say a lot about your physical state of being, but also can tell you a lot about your mental, emotional state. So you can read both things in there. You can see stress. You can see things like anxiety and worry. You can see fear, but inflammation of certain organs. And there's things that you see more often than not. But one piece that's really important about the tongue, and in Ayurveda, Ayurveda believes that all imbalance or all disease starts in the gut, right? Starts with what's called our Agni. And Agni is your ability to digest, right? Your digestive fire. Some people equate with metabolism. It's deeper than that, but your digestion. And when your digestion is off, then everything else in the system is off, right? So your tongue tells a lot also about the state of your Agni. And so it's really nice to look at, do I need a simple cleanse? How much am I digesting? And it's a really good signal to look at that as well.
In fact, when we did get together at the yoga festival and did the whole, diagnosis of the tongue, one woman's center of her tongue, the whole center of her tongue was black. you know, and so it was very interesting. It was like, are you on any particular medications, you know, or anything that would cause that? And it was actually an emotional cleansing she had done that morning, and it was you know, getting rid of the emotional toxins. So that was fascinating too. But I do have the practice of the tongue scraping. I have for years every morning because of the toxins that accumulate on the tongue over the course of the evening. And so scraping that off first thing in the morning rather than brushing your teeth and having them brush back into your system is an excellent practice that I think is great. What are some other things that people can do to improve, or to even take a look at their tongue, and what should they be looking for?
So when you look at your tongue, you're looking at how moist it is, if it's dry, if it's moist, if it's really moist, right? Mm-hmm. What is the color? Is it pink? How are the taste buds? Are the taste buds, you can see them, but they're not inflamed, they're even. Mm-hmm. Are there any cracks or grooves? And when you think about, one of the biggest things is the coating. Like, what is the coating on the tongue? You know, your tongue should be pink, right? Without inflammation, even taste buds, just the right. It's like the Goldilocks story. Just the right amount of moisture, like not too moist, not too dry, not too red, not too pale. So you want to just look at that. But what most people are probably going to see is some kind of light white coating, or if it's a thick white coating, or maybe that coating's a little bit yellowish if it's a pitta type. And that's a reflection of ama. And ama is that toxic residue, that undigested material, as a reflection of our digestive system. And so whatever you see, we saw some tongues there was a lot of stuff going on in there, inflammation, certain parts. What you said with your partner with that deep black groove was something that only I've seen. I think I told you guys, a black tongue twice. So I was like, whoa, wait a minute. But it turns out for her, it was deeply energetic. So tongue scraping is a great practice, especially for the alma. If you see a thin white coating or a thicker white coating, you want to consider, like, how late are you eating at night? One thing that can cause undigested material, especially undigested food, is we've come into this habit in our lives to eat dinner at 7:30, 8, even later than like 8 o'clock at night, in this late into the evening, and eating really heavy meals, right? So this practice of go all day, and then you're exhausted and you're starved by the end of the day, and you sit down and you eat a really heavy meal, and then maybe you drink some wine, and then you go to bed an hour, maybe later, maybe 2. Yeah. I think that's really probably one of the biggest practices in the West that would cause that coating on the tongue. And to learn to shift your dinner earlier and lighter. So that lunch becomes your biggest meal, which is one of the hardest tenets for people to get in Ayurveda, because some of the things are counterculture. And in this culture, we've trained people to want a light lunch. Like, oh, I just got a little salad for lunch, you know? Or this light lunch, or not eat lunch. How many people skip lunch because they're working at their desk and they just blow right through lunch? But even energetically, when you need most of your calories is from midday until 6 p.m. Not from 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. whenever you go to bed, right? Unless you're on the night shift or you're doing something different.
But you're trying to shut down your system, not rev it up. And food does give me energy. So absolutely, it's important to do it throughout the day. Yeah. Throughout the day.
And when your digestive fire is the highest is during the middle of the day, right? When the radiance is highest. So one thing, if you are seeing that white coating, it's really the simplest first thing to look for, some kind of thin or thick or white coating on the tongue. Look at what your meal spacing is, how much you're eating, if you're overeating, and if you're overeating heavy foods, especially late into the evening. And even if your dinner's early and then you snack, throughout the evening, then that would cause it too, right? So there should be a fast from about 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. or when you have your breakfast. Yeah.
Great tips. Thank you so much.